Budrum.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to address the Trust Bill 2025. And, Mr. Speaker, in all the time I've been in this House, I've seen a lot of debates guillotined before, always by the Labor Party, I might add, always by the Labor Party. But I have never seen anyone in this House try to guillotine a debate when only one of their side has addressed the bill. Only one Labor member chose to jump up and address this bill. So far, Mr. Speaker, I know it's a debate and some of them might actually choose to represent their constituency, but rather than sit here and talk about these important issues that have real impact on Queensland, they want to knock off and go to bed, Mr. Speaker. Working on Friday night is a bridge too far for the Labor Party, Mr. Speaker. They want to knock off because they're not getting double time and a half, Mr.
It's late on a Friday afternoon. Let's just get through this. Member for Budrum,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
continue your contribution to the bill.
To the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. They want to knock off because they're not getting double time and a half, Mr. Speaker. But I'll move on to the bill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at the outset, I can't hear because of my own side, Mr. Speaker.
It's pretty bad when I can't hear the member for Budrum.
I can't hear myself think, Mr. Speaker, and this
Member
is
for
an
Budrum
important
is the only
contribution.
one in the chamber that has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at the outset, I want to note that I have an interest in a trust, both as a beneficiary and also as a sole director and secretary of a corporate trustee. It's declared on my register of interest, but out of an abundance of caution, I'm declaring that here tonight. Mr. Speaker, it's been more than 50 years since the Trust Act has been significantly modernised, and that's despite a thorough consultation and comprehensive review back in 2012 when the LNP were last in government. In fact, the former government similarly started work but didn't finish work to address the Trust Bill. It does sound familiar, Member for Currumbin. It's far too often it's all about the announcement at the start, but they forget about the actual doing at the end. That is 100% on the money, Member for Currumbin. But, Mr. Speaker, a lot has changed since the 1970s. For starters, I wasn't even born back then. And, Mr. Speaker, unlike the member for Clayfield, like any legislation that was created almost half a century ago, it's outdated and it needs to be brought into the 21st century. Wow. Mr. Speaker, it's just disappointing it's taken so long for this to occur, but I commend this dynamic Attorney-General in the Christopher government, the member for Nanango, for making this one of her first priorities, among her first priorities, not her first priority, among her first priorities upon being appointed Attorney-General of this state. Mr. Speaker, the Queensland Law Reform Commission conducted the review back in 2012 and in 2013, and they made an expert recommendation back then to update the trust law here in Queensland. More than 10 years later, 10 years of Labor government, it took a long time, the former Labor government finally put the wheels in motion. They finally put the wheels in motion to introduce the Act's modernisation to this place, but they didn't last long enough to actually pass the bill. And the display tonight is very, very clear why that's the case. They simply don't have the heart for it, Mr. Speaker. They simply don't want to step through the systematic, methodical and sometimes boring work. I'm not going to lie, this isn't the most exciting bill in the world, but systematic, methodical, important work, Mr. Speaker, that it takes to govern properly. Those are the bits those opposite the Labor Party forget about far too often. Mr. Speaker, the Christopher government is now doing the work that should have been done when Labor came to power a decade ago. Introducing this bill, now called the Trust Bill 2025, early in the term because Queenslanders have waited long enough for these long overdue reforms. Through thorough consultation with key stakeholders and experts in the field, this modernised bill deals with a range of important matters, including restrictions and general powers for trustees, while providing improved guidance around the maintenance of trust property and court powers. Important issues, Mr. Speaker. Of course, through the committee process in particular, and I want to acknowledge the member for Nicklin. How good is it to have the member for Nicklin back in this place? The member for Nicklin ably chairing the committee that considered this bill, alongside our tremendous members for Thuringowa and Capalaba off the top of my head. And I acknowledge the Labor members and the Green member on that committee as well, although I note that only one of those members chose to speak to the bill, but on the speaking list now. I admit they might come in here, but I noticed they were that intent on ensuring that this bill was rigorously scrutinised, they couldn't even be bothered addressing it. But nonetheless, Mr Speaker, I want to acknowledge the committee's work, and I want to acknowledge the member for Nicklin, the member for Nicklin, the true member for Nicklin in my mind, for his work through some serious issues since he's in his short time back in this place since October. But gee, it's good to have him back, Mr Speaker. And I know the people of Nambour, the people of Kenilworth and Yandina are glad to see a competent committee chair like the member for Nicklin overseeing bills like the Trust Bill 2025. A capable, competent and diligent member of Parliament, as opposed to his predecessor, and I really couldn't be happier. I'm not going to lie, I am most happy that the member for Nicklin is now Marty Hunt in this place. Even more so than the fact that I'm the member for Buderim. Mr Speaker, is there a relevance on this? There is not. Mr Speaker, I'm pleased that there will be a 12-month lead time once this bill's been passed so that we can ensure all Queenslanders are prepared for any changes. It begs the question why those opposite are so eager to put the bill, given there's a 12-month lead time. But Mr Speaker, and I can hear those opposite. She could only speak for a little bit on it when she had a turn, but she wants to interject now. The shadow attorney. Look, maybe you can raise matters in consideration in detail, shadow attorney. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe we just weren't paying attention through the committee process.
Through the chair, thank you.
Sorry, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, I know that there is only one recommendation made by the committee that the shadow attorney sat on and could only speak for a very short period of time on this bill, and that was for it to be passed. And I too support this bill being passed, and I commend the bill to the House.